All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the November 9th, 2020 work session. A work session is an informal meeting where we'll discuss topics and learn about items, but there will be no formal votes taken. Tonight we've got two items on our agenda. If there is public comment, that'll be allowed at each agenda item, and please fill out a public comment card and give it to our city clerk. So with that, I will open up for, if our city clerk will please read the first item.
The first item is presentation of local road safety. Chief Rich Austin and Mr. Robert Drury.
Greetings, Mayor, members of council. Tonight we'll be looking at the proposal for a local road safety plan. A little bit about the background. As you know, Milton citizens routinely raise concerns about traffic in our city and concerns with traffic safety. And the PD routinely works with Public Works. We take a three-pronged approach to traffic safety, which has become the national gold standard for dealing with traffic issues. And we call it the 3 E's, the enforcement, the education component, and the engineering component. And we have dealt with a lot of our traffic issues quite successfully utilizing this method. But what we're finding is our citizens are still having concerns with traffic in our city. So we've added an innovative 4th E to this, which is evaluation, which is a lot of what this local road safety plan is about. Something that we already do, PD tracks our traffic crashes throughout our city. We deploy officers in a very intelligence-led manner. We have very, obviously, finite resources. So what we do is typically if we get a traffic complaint, we will set what's called a JAMAR unit out on a certain area. And what the JAMAR unit does is it collects data. It has a radar inside of it. It's not for enforcement. It's just for data collection. And it lets us know the volume of traffic, the speed of traffic, and gives us a little bit better idea of when and if and when we should deploy officers to that area based on what we're seeing. And it's very good. It gives us a 24/7 snapshot of that area. So again, we've been doing a really good job with this enforcement, education, and engineering in partnership with Public Works, but we'll be looking a little closer at our evaluation techniques. So our current crash data across the city, this is year to date, total crashes are down 35%. Property damage crashes down 34%, with personal injury crashes down 37%. We had 543 crashes in 2019 from January to October, and this year we are down to 352 reported crashes from January to October. Now, a lot of this is a bit artificial because of COVID. Our volume of traffic, as you could easily see, went down throughout the city. I will say, though, while some cities reported an uptick in personal injury crashes due to the less traffic on the roads, the idea is that folks felt like they could travel quite a bit faster. In some areas, they did experience that, but we've been down. But again, we know this is typically, it looks like this is because of COVID, in conjunction with our other practices. So our local road safety plan. We realize that citizens want a city in which traffic flows safely, efficiently, and calmly. And as I said, we address safety. We do that quite a bit. And overall, folks can get from point A to point B relatively safely and efficiently. We built roundabouts. We're doing a lot of things with infrastructure to continue to try to ensure that Milton traffic flows efficiently. But one area where our feedback is consistent is folks want to traverse our roadways a bit more calmly. And that includes not only drivers, that includes pedestrians, that includes bicyclists. We've introduced personal transportation vehicles into the mix now. So this is everyone that uses our roadways. So what is a local road safety plan? Well, this is a plan that we looked at through the Federal Highway Administration. And they offer a tool for local communities. But the one that we want to do is not just based on a template plan, because Milton is a very unique community. So our plan will be based on Milton's unique features and challenges. And the goal of this plan is to reduce the negative effects of motor vehicles on the quality of life of folks in Milton. Prioritizes areas of the city where we have either known traffic issues or perceived traffic issues. And what will be a bit different about this is citizen input will drive the process. I think we all hear from our citizens at different locations of the city that are areas of concern, but we also want to consider their fear associated with traveling our roads. And this is something that has been long known in the area of criminal justice. It doesn't matter if you drive crime down to very low levels. If people are still fearful of walking or doing things within their city, then what have we done? So we also want to address that fear that is associated. We want to inform our citizens when things are better and work with our communications department to do that. The city will bring in consultants to assist only after sufficient groundwork has been completed to identify the areas of focus, both the data and also the feedback from our citizens and other stakeholders. Our objectives, we want to learn in a very comprehensive manner the when, the where, and the why there may be fear in traveling in Milton. Again, whether that's on foot, in a car, bicycle, golf cart, what have you. And we want to hear from stakeholders throughout the community. We want to develop very specific strategies compiled into our own Milton local road safety plan to ease these fears while we also maximize the safety and efficiency of traveling within our city. And this plan, again, would incorporate a very robust data collection and also consider our unique factors. We talk about, within our work group, we've talked about the horse trailers trying to get onto two-lane roads. We talk about farm equipment. There are a lot of things that are very unique to Milton, not just that it's a two-lane road with a speed limit of X. There are a lot of other factors that will go into developing this local road safety plan. And we want to outline our priorities on Milton roadways and develop design goals. And these will inform future improvement products, and perhaps we'll utilize traffic calming principles. And here is just an overall local road safety plan process. It'll begin with the planning, which a vital component of that will be the community input. These will be through multiple opportunities for surveys. And through that and through our data, we'll identify our areas of concern. And only when we have that framework built, that good solid foundation built of both feedback and data, will we then reach out to hire a consultant to help us with the next part of the process. There are so many engineering companies out there that would just be willing to come in and again, just let us know the basics of engineering. We have folks in-house that can do that. We want them to couple that data with what we're hearing back from our citizens and other stakeholders. So we'll have a data collection period, a bit of time to analyze that data, return to the community with results and some meetings as we can. And then we'll come up with, at that point, with a proposal and projects, and then come back to this body to discuss those further. And then we'll move into implementation. So here are some of our local road safety plan partners, our citizens, of course, this body, engineers, public works, both the director and the staff, police department, fire department, consultants, just a plethora of folks that will be considered partners in this. Of course, our schools are responsible for a good amount of our traffic, so certainly they need to be at the table. And of course, the Federal Highway Administration as they are a good source for guidance. And then we'll bring in others if needed. So again, our action items, that initial community survey, then we'll determine our emphasis areas, and at that point, bring in the consultant, go through the data collection for our areas of emphasis, analyze that data, and then, if all goes well, move into implementation. Some of our strategies, public education campaign. Again, if we're doing a good job, if we're driving our crashes down throughout the city, folks need to realize that, and that can help ease that fear of driving throughout our city or using our roadways throughout the city. Phased enforcement, as many of you know, the police department typically, if we have an area of concern, we start out with warnings and then we move gradually into enforcement, unless it's something that's extremely egregious, which is very rare. Engineering updates throughout the process, systemic improvements throughout the city, and of course, maintenance, speed reductions, which we'll talk about in just a couple of moments, and then fusion with this larger plan with transportation and mobility master plans. Be sure that it's all inclusive. So our goals: improve safety experience and perception for all roadway users, and that's all encompassing. A programmed list of strategies and projects for improvements, baseline data for intersection operations, and to provide some historic counts for future studies. And then speed limit recommendations in these emphasis areas. We have a lot of questions that come to us regarding radar permits, how they might be changed. So that is something that we will be looking at. Now, the number one question that we get is, why go through all this? Why can't we just lower the speed limits and then rely on strict enforcement? Well, there are a couple of reasons for that. Radar permits. These are under the purview of the state. The Georgia Department of Transportation reviews our roads for radar permits. They're the ones that let us know whether or not we can have a radar or utilize radar for enforcement on a particular roadway. They look at the grade of the roadway, they look at several other factors, and this process can take 6 to 8 months. And then if they approve it, it's sent on to the Georgia Department of Public Safety, who then issues the permit. Now, if we lower the speed limit, certainly that's within the purview of the city to just go out and put another sign up at a lower speed limit, but we lose the radar permit. And so then GDOT would have to come back out and do a study. And also, another part of this is when we use radars on roadways, according to state law, we have to require a leeway of 10 miles per hour. So we can't even start enforcement until the speeds go over 10 miles per hour over the posted speed limit. And part of this is also based on what's called the 85th percentile speed. And this is historically how we've used this engineering method to study speed limits and what the appropriate speed limits for a roadway should be. So Sarah Leaders, who is much more adept at this 85th percentile than I will come up and talk a little bit about our 85th percentile speed.
So like I said, historically, that's been our key data we've used in setting the speed limits in the city, and that's what DOT has reviewed as well. Like I said, one of the goals of our local road safety plan is speed limit recommendations based on some of the data we collect. And part of that, we're going to look at some alternate methods for setting speed limits. Looked at a Transportation Research Board report called Managing Speeds that highlights some other methods. Like I said, historically, we've used the engineering study method, which takes the data collection of the number of drivers and the speed. The graph on the top right is an illustration of what the 85th percentile speed is. So number of drivers is on the vertical axis, and so your average speed is going to be where you have the highest percentage of drivers. The 85th represents this hatched area. So it's the speed where 85% of the cars are driving that speed or slower, and only 15% are going faster than that speed. And so that method, it's based on the fact that, or the assumption that drivers are choosing reasonable speeds, that they're balancing safety and efficiency of the roadway system, which isn't always the case with some of the other conditions or context of the roads. So another method that our plan is going to provide data for is using a expert system-based approach. And that's going to take into account more factors than just the operating speed. And the graphic on the bottom right is just an illustration of what operating speed encompasses. So, drivers, they see the posted speed, the road can handle certain speeds. There's other conditions that play into the ultimate operating speed of the roadway. But the expert system-based approach is going to look at more than just the operating speed. It'll look at the roadway context and the vulnerable users of the roadway system as well. So our local road safety plan, like I said, this is one goal of it, and it'll set us up with the data and documentation for needed to use this alternate method for setting speed limits. With that, we'll take any questions.
Questions for Chief Austin or Sarah? Carol?
So, crash analysis is a life experience here. Have a lot of years halfway through, you switch to that, which is your you'll have both pieces. You'll have the statistical of that recklessness, which crash, and then you have the other input, which is the anecdote. I've made it no secret. I'm Providence, but it's not just limited to Providence. It's Freemanville. It's Bethany behind me. A lot of joyriding that's going on. I'm not being dramatic. I'm just telling you, the way it is. So we get this input. What's the end game? I have so many wonderful officers, and they can't just be chasing speeders, and we got other stuff to do. Can we put up the things we're happened to me last year in another city, but who would mention? I thought it was very effective. I was like, really? But anyway, I mean, where go with not proved to be crash related? I've never seen an accident. I mean, deer hit, but I hate to tie this up with this experience, but a lot of people on Freemanville, for example, speeding. So what do you do with that?
Well, one of the things we're looking at is that the speeding, while it's not resulting in crashes, and that is exactly the kind of information that we would want from a wide cross-section of our citizens, because our goal here is to improve quality of life. If that is reducing the quality of life of the folks on that road, if they live in fear that they may be involved in an accident, they may have had several close calls, they may enjoy bicycling, but they're afraid to participate in that activity. That's the kind of feedback that we want to hear about. So that, yes, we can alter enforcement where appropriate, and we can also inform them through the robust data collection. And our end goal is for everyone to utilize our roadways and not be afraid to do so.
But can you use technology to solve the problem?
Maybe not solve it. That may very well be a component. I don't think we can rely wholly on technology, but there are certainly technological tools out there that we can utilize to help with this problem. That's where we would hope our consultant could give us some good ideas.
Laura, I think you had a question.
Thank you for this presentation. I just want to, the word calmly, I think, is really important because this community has transformed from a rural farming community to a very desirable place to live. And we have cities around us, and so some of our most valued view sheds and property owners are on our open roads. And so for them to be able to calmly get their mail and not feel like they're threatened, that's important to us, I think, because that's what we're trying to keep here in Milton is these larger parcels, whether they're farms or estate lots. So we've also spent so much money on green space and trail plans and walkability. And I one of the things that's really interesting, Sarah, you know this kind of stuff, but if you're hit by a vehicle traveling 20 miles an hour, 9 out of 10 people survive. If you're hit at 30 miles an hour, 5 out of 10, 40, only 1 out of 10 people survive that. So we've spent all this time on a trail plan and walkability and green space that, could be connected. I mean, this is really a way to improve the quality of life for our citizens and also, property values. The biggest deterrent for many of our farms is road noise. Standing there and just listening to the cars whizzing by that will significantly be reduced if we can slow it down and let these people get out of their farms with their horse trailers and safely do that. So thank you for allowing us to have this discussion. I know it's not easy, but I think it's worthy. I think that we can be be safe, improve the quality of our life, life for our citizens. And I would just suggest that if we do go the consultant route, that we find a consultant that has been successful in reducing the speed limit in a city in Georgia somewhere, so that we can start to do. I mean, I have a list, and I've kept of citizens that have called me, whether it's Bream Ridge and Birmingham Road, Freemanville, Batesville, Providence, Hopewell, Cogburn, and then there's the Senior Hill, where it's just terrifying when you hear gravel roads. Everyone is asking for us. The crossroads that people cut across. So I know we all know this, but it is the number one thing that I get called on. I thank you for this presentation, and I appreciate doing. I think I read somewhere that we would conduct a survey.
Absolutely.
And I think that's great because I think we'll get some real good information about how the community feels.
Anybody else? Paul?
Chief, part of the presentation talked about the data collection early on and about speed in particular. Are there a variety of methodologies? You don't need to address them because I just. Are there a variety of methodologies that are going to be used to capture the speed? And the reason I ask that is I think about a speed survey that was done in my own neighborhood. Markers were there, and people would need a sudden artificial reduction in speed,
right?
Because it was anticipated that there was a speed. So we weren't necessarily getting true data. We had some good discoveries too. There was a late night speeder that raised our numbers and artificially. Are there a variety of data collection methodologies that overcome chance of inaccurate information, or is it like address the solution? Are there a variety?
Yes, there are. There are some technological. There have been some technological advances, some that I actually looked at even today, that would help us achieve that goal.
Good. Second part, you talked about engineering speed. Talk about that a little bit. What those things might be when we're trying not to necessarily infringe in having here, but yet lower the speeds.
When we first started talking about this, it seemed like a lot of it was relative to traffic calming that we do in neighborhoods. So some of those measures that we use aren't applicable to collector roads. some are designed for 25-mile-an-hour roads, but there are some other features we could look at with future improvements that, including paving if we make the lanes a little narrower and have the a paved strip for bicycles, things like that. Some things that are in the traffic calming toolbox that are maybe more applicable to the collector type roadways, but we're open to looking at different things as part of that.
Anybody else? Just a couple comments. No, thank you guys for doing this and working on this, because to Laura's point, we do get a lot of feedback on speeding, and I'd have to say I'm almost not sure if I get more calls about people complaining about speeders or complaining because they got pulled over for speeding. But all kidding aside, obviously it's more important that we control the speeding than people complaining about getting pulled over. That may be we may not want to have that. People think of getting pulled over all the time. Word I'm looking for, but that reputation. But in other ways, if it keeps people safer and keeps them slower, certainly is good. So we certainly want to, pour all we can and do what we can to have a good balance. But obviously, do we have any public comment on that, Tammy?
We do not.
All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Tammy, if you will call the next item.
The second item is discussion of Providence Park Trail layout. Mr. Robert Drury.
Good evening. You recognize this gentleman to my left. Everybody knows Scott Reese. Scott's going to help me out with this. He's engaged Brumbelow and Reese to help us do a layout of the Providence Park Trail system. So I brought Scott along to kind of help explain some of the details. We have had some issues with it, and that's why we're presenting it to you. Just to recap, the master plan was adopted by Council June 2018. We're going to focus on the trail system, and at the end we have some schematics that we want to unfold for the proposed restroom and the proposed pier. And that's what the master plan looks like. I'm not going to go over it, but I just want you to see there's a lot of elements on that master plan that we got to try to incorporate as we design the trail. To orient, I got another slide for that. These are the existing trails in Providence Park. You see the red trail and the blue trail. We don't plan on doing anything at this time with the blue trail. And both of these trails, by the way, are just natural surface trails. The red trail we are going to work on considerably. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it kind of predates me. I know that we've committed to moving the trail off that western property line at least 50 feet, so that's part of the plan. And we're going to show you what we propose for the new multi-use trail. But I want you to see what the existing trails look like right now. We have a grant through the Georgia Recreational Trails Grant Program. The grant does have some specific requirements. It's got to be at least a half a mile long, 8-foot wide paved trail, and not exceed a 5% grade to physically allow ADA users. Now that posed a challenge to us because we have significant grades out at Providence Park. That's the topographical map of Providence Park, and it drops like a rock, almost literally. I think Scott had told me we've got about an 80-foot fall from the top to the lake. And it's very difficult getting a 5% slope in this park. And that's been a challenge. We've had Scott and his engineer has gone through a lot of iterations to try to create this trail at a 5% slope. And I think we finally successfully were able to locate a trail. Just also want to show you, this came from the master plan, this is the vegetation out at Providence Park. We are very aware of the forested area of the park, and we do not want to deforest it. So when you put a trail in there, we got to be very careful where we put the trail, how wide the clearing is going to be, and how much deforestation are we going to have to do. So I want to show this to you. The dark green you see is the hardwood forest. And you have some transitional forest And then you have emerging forest, which is primarily young pine trees. And you see the yellow area, which is kind of an open space. I believe that's the area they mitigated for the hazardous waste back years ago. So we're very much aware of that. I wanted to show that to you as we show the layout of the park. This is what Scott and his team have laid out. To orient you, you got the entrance road, the parking is here. See my cursor moving, that's the quarry. And then we have the lake up in here. So the yellow is the east trail and the green is the west trail. The east trail is what we're going to make for the recreational trails grant program. So we're proposing the east trail would be 8-foot wide paved trail, and it's at least a half a mile long with a 5% slope. That is the layout that Scott's going to kind of show you in a minute. That's a busy slide, but on the left you see the trail in yellow coming again out of the parking lot and working its way down to the lake. The items in red, Scott will go through this a little bit more a little closer, but the items in red are a proposed boardwalk and a proposed pier. So each one of those, there's 3 different slides we're going to kind of focus in on as we go through this presentation. And on the right is the cross-section of the trail itself. Again, an 8-foot wide paved trail. And we propose to have a foot shoulder on it and limit the amount of grading on the outside of the shoulder. It depends on if it's a cut slope or a fill slope, of course. But we hope to clear in most areas no more than 10 feet, but we don't want to go any wider than that. And there are areas we may have to. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott and let him go through the details of the plan.
So based upon the design criteria, we were limited to 5% or 5 feet of fall per 100 feet of length. So that it made it with the 75, 80 feet of elevation difference between the beginning and the terminus. It was a pretty difficult task to not go in and just rape the woods. So we've got a little more switchback than we had originally hoped, but we've separated the trail enough, in our opinion, that as you're walking, you will have the woodland experience where you're not, shaking hands with a neighbor that's coming up the other side there. So we feel like we've done that, and we tried to limit the grading to areas that the forest is either emerging or not as nice as maybe the hardwood section up on the top. So let's go. So this first section that we're showing from leaving the paved street and the parking lot that's existing now, this is the primarily mature hardwoods, and we followed the contours as closely as we could. And as you're looking at the trail, the little solid lines that are going through that look like kind of extended stairs, those are the proposed grades. And on this section, you see pretty well no grading outside of just trying to match the grade that's existing where we can minimize the loss of the trees. So now we're coming down and we're picking up a little more elevation change, and we're also going to get into the more pine forest. So we've gone in, and I'm sure all of you that have skied know that to go down the hill to limit your speed, you've got to crisscross and go. So we've gone through and tried to take out the severity of the slope, following the 5%, coming around the contours and switching back. In this, we're picking up some limited grading where we're going to have to take out a few more trees. But like I say before, we've tried to limit it where it's the least conducive. So this is the section. Yes.
Question real quick.
Yeah, sure thing.
How often do we anticipate we'll be using it for skiing?
Probably, we've had one blizzard in the last 30
Other
years.
blue moon, so, just.
But
Oh,
I,
kidding,
and,
sorry.
and I get your point, and levity is always great. But this will be used by people in wheelchairs. So we're still looking at limiting that grade and coming down the same concept. So this slide shows the section of the trail from station 600 through 700, where we're going to have say a 4-foot cut. So in this section, we're going to be taking out a wider swath than the minimum. We come down, and this is above the section. I don't know how many of you were there years ago when we had when Fulton County had the little building and all. This is kind of in that cleared area there, and we've tried to maximize our grading in this area. And you can see you've got the emerging pines up ahead, kind of a mix area in there with some other pine. So we don't feel like in this area that we're going to lose a significant amount of trees in putting the grading in. So we came down into the section now below where the old parking lot and the old building is. And this is where, once again, in a lot of grading or a lot of elevation change. So let's go to the next. Do we have pictures on? So this is where the hazardous materials were. And what we're proposing here is to make our biggest radical grade change. So we've already got a deforested area. So what we're proposing to do is basically change this grade, and we're going to lower it, and we're going to put a very flat slope and use all of this graded area. And when we're through, it's just going to be this lowered. And we're not anticipating losing many trees. And the end result is going to be basically the same. It will be a usable area. And if you remember on your master plan, this was shown as an open space meadow. So we're trying to incorporate that in. And another part of that is, if you're not familiar with Providence Park, the way it came into, public ownership with Fulton County, is it was a rock quarry for road building when Fulton County took over Milton County. And this wall is one of the very few WPA projects that are around. The Depression Works Project Administration. And so we want to incorporate this in, so we're going to grade almost up to this wall and clear out. So this will be an amenity that's there and kind of focus in that area. So you'll notice the yellow, that's going to be the paved. As we get down closer to the lake, the Providence Lake is an NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, flood management lake, and it has an extensive area of drainage, and with that, a big flood storage capacity. Once we get in that flood storage area, we can't change the grading because we change the volume of the flood storage. And if I fail, then I push the volume over on someone else. So in that area, we need a boardwalk to transition from where we can grade and come down to where we hit back on natural ground. So we've got, it's like a 70-foot, I think, 80-foot boardwalk in there to where we don't have to fill in the floodplain and get a state permit and all the others. So we've worked with that. And then we come down to the edge of the lake, you'll see the other purple or area there. And that's going to be a boardwalk or pier extending out over the lake slightly. So, and we'll pick up the natural ground at the end of the yellow and extend out. Do we have a good slide of the cross section or just
that one we showed you
okay?
earlier.
So let's go back to it if we can. So I wanted to go over a little bit, if you'll look on the right-hand side at this is our proposed cross-section. So what we're doing is we're showing or proposing a 2% cross slope on the trail. So what we're trying to do as the water does a sheet flow down the hillside, instead of concentrating it in ditches and carrying it to pipes and then having to deal with that erosion potential of the concentrated flow through the pipes, our plan is to take the natural contours, catch it on the high side of the trail, and have a cross slope of 1/4 inch per foot, or 2%, and carry that water straight across the trail back into the woods without creating ditches or erosion problems. So that was kind of one of our better methods of handling this, and we've got the 8-foot paved section, 1 foot of shoulder on each side that'll just be gravel to stabilize the paving. We don't want it to break off on the edge. And then we're looking at a 2-foot minimum when we're on good grade of just taking the trees back enough to where we don't have the I guess, claustrophobic feel or something on that. So we think we've kind of handled it the best way possible. There's really want to thank Milos. The work that he put on this is really good, and I think it's the best case scenario as far as creating an amenity for the city using the grant money that's out there, which then helps your taxpaying citizens, which we all appreciate. And hopefully we will come up, or you guys see that this would be an amenity, and that we've kind of came through the hurdles. It was, like I said, handling the near 80 feet of elevation difference from the top to the lake and crossing down, and not creating trails that were 10 feet side by side to work out the slope. So that pretty well fills in any, the restaurants.
So that concludes the trail portion of the presentation, and I think Scott's done a really good job of giving us a layout that will work, will meet the requirements of the grant. And that's what you're going to see in yellow is the trail for the grant. The trail in green will remain a natural surface trail for those users who don't necessarily need to be on the paved trail. So, and it'll loop together. And that was another one of the ideas, was something that can loop for most of the trail users. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Bob, who's going to talk a little bit about the restrooms and the pier.
One question before you guys step down. Just, is there any question? I also want to thank Mr. Lancelot's here, a neighbor of right by the park. So I think I recognize you behind the mask. But Mr. Lancelot, if you had any, feel free if you had any comments, or if you'd like to step up, if you don't mind, so we can all hear, if you don't mind. Tammy, if you don't mind, fill out a card.
Very nice to see that after all these years. Thanks so much. Will that be available? That drawing you have up there?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Just to sort of clue me in as to where some of these features are. Now, as I understand this right, the yellow trail, which I think is very nice, that'll be paved then, the yellow part, and the part that's shown in green will remain
right
with a natural surface. Now that doesn't is that the current? Is that the current part of the red trail there? Has that been sort of relocated, but remaining in its natural surface?
We're proposing to,
here, sorry.
Yeah, we're proposing to move.
That is, okay.
That's going to be moving over at least 50 feet away from the property line.
Right.
As a natural trail.
And is the entrance, is that pretty much the same entrance into the red trail today?
It is. Yes, sir.
Now I see the Providence Park Road heading down there. As you move further out to the upper right of the scheme there, that's the area where the old lodge used to be, basically, sir?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and then that leads into what used to be, what was the meadows. It's now that open roadway heading down to the pier.
Yes, sir.
Nice. Just wanted to know some details. It's fine. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you for being here and your input. So, is there any questions on the trail part for Scudder? Good, Peyton.
I got a quick question. So on the trail, so so it's 362, right, and then $200,000 grant. So out of pocket, we're out 162 is how much we're costing us. So just for like citizens' sake, how much would it be if we didn't have to do the ADA, didn't have to pave it? How much would it cost?
We haven't run those numbers.
Okay, I was just-
Yeah, but I couldn't tell you.
I mean, I just want the citizens to know they're coming out ahead.
We'll have an ADA trail, though, for the citizens.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Carol.
So what's the backstory on why the ADA trail on this particular property problematic with the grade? This place specific, or could we have applied it to the country club?
This grant was specifically for Providence Park, and it's actually one of three grants. One of three grants at the park. The restrooms also have a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, and the pier itself, I believe, as well. So there are multiple grants on this park specifically for this park.
Anybody else? Laura?
Scott, nothing to the west changes?
Well, so right now, the West Trail, okay, so there you go. There's the existing red trail. And I'm sure you were at the meetings like and the property owners on the western side there were complaining about, 5 feet away from their property line was now a walking trail with a good bit of noise and different things, some trash. And so in those meetings, it was decided that we're going to try to push that out. So at about, I guess that's number 2 up there, the symbol, we're relocating the trail from there down to, I guess, symbol number 4, and we're pulling it at least 50 feet away. But this is going to be the trail that's similar to what's out there. They're just going to grub out the underbrush and not, if we come up to a tree, you're going to walk around it or put the trail around it. So there'll be no grading and no trees over 6 inches removed, or that's the proposed plan on that.
Nothing happens to the blue trail? The
It
creek
stays
stays?
complete.
That's
Yes,
it.
it's not part of this plan at all, improvement plan. Yes.
Paul?
So the blue trail still remains walkable?
Yes, sir.
Just not a part of this?
Right, there's no improvements to the blue trail.
Right, thank you.
Anybody else want to throw out a comment to Scott while he's up here on the other side? Thank you very much for what you guys done and the presentation tonight on that.
Council. So I just wanted to add a couple of things. I know we went through a lot of the technical parts of how we got to this portion of the trail, but I want to assure you that when we were looking at this trail, I mean, Providence Park is 40 acres. It's passive. We didn't want to destroy any of the vegetation and trees. And most of all, we wanted an experience. So when you take in the trail and you're on the trail, the experience that the user is going to capture while being on the trail. So even though we had to go back and forth with some switchbacks, we kept them wide, kept them far apart, so as you're walking, you don't see somebody ahead of you. You get an orientation, one direction, turn, and then you have an orientation of another direction. And as you're experiencing the trail and going through it, and there's trail markers to tell you where you are, there's some benches if you want to take a break. But more than anything, the one feature we have is the lake. And it's absolutely breathtaking. So, I walk this trail all the time. So as you're walking down the trail, I want to assure the council that you're going to get these little pictures, little open windows. Like, wow, look, there's something there at the end of the trail. Because what good is a trail if there's no feature at the end of the trail? It's like, okay, I took this trail. So what? I'm kind of bored, I want something there. So you're going to see the lake, and then at the very end of the trail, we did go for the grant, and we got it, and we've kept it true to the grant, but the pier. So the lake does go up and down considerably with, the amount of, volume that it accepts. But we kept the pier about 3 feet off the normal pool. That's 100-year floods, yeah, it might go up to the top a little bit and cover it a little bit, but and the pier is partially covered, so you have areas that you could sit and get away from the sun. It's still snuggled into the tree area a little bit, into the tree line, so it's not sticking out in the middle of the lake, so the rest of the users and owners around the lake wouldn't see this thing, being a sore thumb sitting in the middle of the lake, which was a concern. They wanted to make sure it wasn't overpowering. And then there's open areas of the pier, so, kids can go fishing and just sit there and meditate. So I guess it's the feature at the end of the trail. And that's really the key here, so that people feel like there's a reason to utilize the trail. And then if you want to, you can go back on through a smaller natural, much more challenging trail, or you can take the 88 trail back. So it was really kind of thought that way. And then when you start your experience and you pull up, we have the restrooms, because we wanted to have some of those just as a feature there. I mean, it's nice to have a restroom in the park area. But the restrooms were designed in such a way we also put in educational boards. So when you're walking to the restrooms, there's 2 educational covered board areas. One might just be a trail plan to show you where you are or what the trail looks like. Another one might be some educational items, because we have a lot of sustainable elements that are now incorporated into this bathroom. I know it's a small little bathroom, but it's really going to be a place where I think schools might want to bring the students to show them what a green vegetated roof looks like, or all these other sustainable elements. And it'd be a place where, the children can come and actually use it as an educational component besides just being a bathroom. Listen, we're trying to capture the most that we can with the minimal amount of invasiveness to the park, and yet still have these things become part of the park and become part of the natural experience of the park. So that's what we did. So we kept true to the bathrooms, we kept true to the pier, and I think it's really going to be quite a nice experience to be on the trail.
Any questions for?
And this is a picture of the pier. So it shows you the covered part. It's about 120 feet, the actual boardwalk into the pier. The technical parts, there'll be railings on all sides so that nobody falls in, and there'll be seating on there.
Questions?
What's the time frame?
Right.
All right. Well, as far as the pier and the bathrooms, they're in working drawings right now, so we should have them on the street by the end of the year to bid out and see, once we get the pricing. Hopefully the pricing comes in good, and then we can just get into the construction. We're really looking to do all 3 elements under one bid. We've discussed it quite a bit and said the best way to really do this, to minimize the impact on the landscape, is to just have all 3, the trail, the pier, and the bathroom, all bid together as a package. So that's what we've been trying to.
And
I would like to add to that too as well for the trail part. The grant is expiring the December of next year. So we plan on just turning Scott loose, preparing some design plans, and getting this out to bid as quickly as you can, first of the year probably.
bathroom sit again? In relation to the parking lot.
Across the road. So it would be right here at where the trail winds off.
I can't see that.
Can you see that? Oh, no, you can't. Oh, they can't.
Or up one. That's
Yeah, this is a better one. So it's right up in this area right here. Right where this yellow trail comes in and snakes.
Okay.
But the Y occurs right there.
Yep.
There'll be a connection right to the road directly. So there's two ways to get to it. It's either directly from the road or from the trail.
Amy, do we have any other public comment? Mr. Lancelot, you have another question? I think legally, work session, I can allow you to ask your question. Yep. Yeah, that's a good question we can have. Yeah, is there, and I know Laura, I think Laura asked a minute ago about timing and when we had to have it done, but is there a phasing?
Well, as Bob had mentioned, we want to put all components into one package, one bid package. And now, based on tonight's meeting, I'm going to turn Scott loose to get the design done for the trail. We already have a architectural firm working on the pier and the restrooms. So we're going to put all these plans together in one bid package, hopefully before the end of the year, get that out to bid, because we have to build it next year. We have to be done by the end of next year.
Okay. All right, thank you. Also, just wanted to take this opportunity, and Bob, thank you, as most everybody knows, has stepped in as acting community development director, so we appreciate that. Also, pat on the back for Tom, has assumed the role of Parks and Recreation Department head, so congratulations on that. We're looking forward to working with you moving forward. So, are there any other questions or comments? All right, then we'll adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you.